Hey, everybody. Welcome to Podcast Answers, the show where I help you start and grow your podcast, answering any podcast questions along the way. Guys, I've had technical difficulties today. It's been a while since I've been in my studio. This last week I was actually out at the county fair, and so when I was not in the studio, I was not doing this like I normally do, and so for me, it was quite a bit of resetting and getting back in here and trying to realize what I did. It's been a while since I've been here in the studio, right? So for me, I wanted to make sure that I had everything going, and I didn't have it going right this morning. Lots of things. And you know what, guys? I've been doing podcasting since 2007, and there are still times that I start and I mess up the show. So today, guys, what we are talking about is we are going to be talking about pitfalls and issues of recording in the field, because that's what I did last time. I recorded in the field and I had some trouble. So what I mean by recording in the field is I was out at my county fair and I didn't have any of my podcast studio with me. I just had my iPhone and I recorded video and audio on my iPhone. So here are some of the negative things that I had that I faced while trying to do this episode. And there was noise around me. So some of the time when I was trying to do the show, it ended up being kind of noisy in there. There was fans going on, and again, and lots of people talking, and I get that. Like, this isn't going to be an episode where you're producing this all the time, and so you're going to have sometimes, and people are going to put up with the fact that there may be some louder noises. And it's kind of cool if you're in the field to get that field noise around you, because then it actually helps people understand that you're not in your normal studio. You are not normally where you go. You're not normally where you're at, but you are in another location. And so sometimes that helps. But for me, it was a little bit distracting. The other thing, too, is I couldn't do it live. I couldn't do a live video and a live audio. So the way that I do this podcast, guys, is I stream it live to YouTube as I record it, as well as I also stream live audio from the podcast apps. So one of the new Podcasting 2.0 features allows you to actually have podcast apps that will allow you to listen live. So I am live streaming right now to podcast apps like Podverse FM, and there's a few other ones that allow you to listen live while we're going. So if you've not done that, check that out, because it's kind of cool listening to your podcaster create their podcast live before, and you get the kind of raw, unedited version, which is cool. But I couldn't do it in the field because I didn't have the ability on my phone to do the live stream. Yeah, sure, I could have done a live, maybe Facebook Live or something like that, but that just wasn't what I was going for this time. And I decided to just focus on the audio and just focus on producing good quality audio and as best I could, as well as getting the video involved too. So another issue that I had is I couldn't create a transcript. So I create a transcript for all of my episodes, and I use an application called Mac Whisper for that allows me to take my audio file when I'm done and run it through transcription. I'm sure that there may be apps for that for the phone. I didn't have one handy on me, so I didn't actually create a transcript for it, which, again, not a huge deal, but it's something I do because it's nice to be able to look at that as you're listening. For those of you people who are hard of hearing, it also helps them be able to enjoy the podcast as well. And when I was in the field, I couldn't do that transcript. I couldn't have it. I just couldn't do the transcript. So I didn't have a transcript to go off of for this episode. There's no chapters. I decided not to chapter. I could have chaptered in my program, the program I was using to edit. I was using Fairwrite to edit and to put the image and things like that in my MP3. I could have chaptered out the MP3 with that application. However, I didn't do that, and I kind of just decided that it was easier to skip because my episode last week was really short anyways. It wasn't something that was really long, and so I decided to just go ahead and do no chapters on that. For me, it was also harder because I was doing video. If I had just recorded audio, I could have got a little bit better audio quality because I could have brought it close to the phone close to my mouth, closer to my mouth, and got a little bit better audio. But I was recording video as well because I like to put out video for these episodes. And so for me, I had to have the phone kind of away from me. And then I did a couple different ways of capturing the video for that too. I was using an app, and we'll go through the whole process later, but I was using an app from Rode that allows me to get dual video, so I can get the front camera and the back camera at the very same time. And I thought that was kind of cool because it got me, as I was walking, you could see what was happening in front of me as well as behind me. And then if you were also in the field, you could take that video and get content from other people. So if you're doing an interview, you could actually hold your phone out and get front and back camera. So I did that, as well as I also used just the regular camera on my phone. I had some challenges with the video that was taken from the Rode app, and it was out of sync a little bit with the audio. And I don't know if that was my fault or the app's fault, but it was out of sync. You'll notice when you watch the video that I did, it was actually out of sync. So for me, another thing that was an issue was if I were just using Captivate for my podcast, where I upload that to them and then my RSS feed is all the way through Captivate, it would have been a lot easier because their site is designed mobile friendly. There's not a lot of fields in there, but you can do it and you can make that work. That's how I uploaded the file. I actually just went ahead and used their mobile website and uploaded it and created it like that. However, for me, my RSS feed is, because I like to use some new features in Podcasting 2.0 and just kind of roll my own RSS feed. I actually do it in WordPress. I use an app called, or a plugin in WordPress called PowerPress. And so for me, what I do is I take all of the information that I get from Captivate and bring it like the link for the MP3 and things like that and bring it into my WordPress site. The WordPress site isn't super mobile friendly. I ran into some issues where I was trying to get over to the edge of things and I couldn't quite scroll over to the edge. I couldn't quite get to where I needed to. It wasn't exactly friendly as far as that goes. But you could, if you're just using your podcast host, usually those are going to be a little bit more mobile friendly and you could do that really easily. But for me, since I was using WordPress, that was not super easy to do. And then the other thing that I ran into issue is it wasn't a huge issue, but it was a negative. I couldn't do an early release. I mean, I could have done that. I just would have had to post it to the Apple Podcast Connect as well as Buy Me a Coffee. And I was actually filming it and recording it on the day that I was going to release it. So I didn't do an early release. And I don't always do early releases with this podcast. But if I do record the episode earlier in the week or a week before, then I do go ahead and early release it for supporters. I just didn't do that, so that was kind of a negative. So some of the positive things is if you're not going to be at your studio, you can create an episode. It works with the right tools and some planning ahead. And by planning ahead, you get your assets together. So by assets, what I mean is I grabbed my MP3 of my music and put that on iCloud, so I had it with me on my phone, as well as I exported all of my graphics, my lower thirds for my video as I had to do it as an animated GIF, just because it didn't work super well in Adobe Rush if I used it as an MP3 or MP4 with transparency. So I had to use it as a animated GIF, which worked. It was fine, but I had to get that ahead of time, so I had that with me. So it may be worth it to kind of plan out. If you know you're going to be gone on an episode where you want to release an episode, it may be good to go ahead and actually set those things up so you're ready to go ahead of time, that you have them. Or if you just want to get that ready to go, you can always leave that stuff on, an iCloud or a Dropbox or somewhere where you have it on your phone. in case you need those things. So I some of the things that I did notice, and again, you can do this. It's possible to do your mobile show. If you're only going to do this once in a while, your audience is going to be okay with it. If you do it all the time where you're using your phone, your audience will probably not stick with you because the audio quality isn't super great. But if they know that you're just going to use this one time, or you need to get a couple clips of audio from the field, it's not that big of a deal. But if you don't do it all the time, because people aren't going to stick with you, they're going to stop listening. So here's my process, guys. Here's how I did the mobile show. I kind of talked about it a little bit on the last episode, but I want to go into it a little bit more deeper and have a deeper dive on that. So I'm on an iPhone. This process may be a little bit different for those of you who are on an Android. But what I did is I recorded my episode while I was walking. So again, I recorded pieces of it. One part I did while I was sitting at the camper, and another part of it I did as I was walking. And so I stopped and started recording parts at different parts of the day. This made editing really hard because for me, mostly I don't do any editing on this show. Like this show, if you're listening live, you're going to know that I had to start over again because I messed up the very beginning with my audio. I'll clip that out, but I don't do a whole lot of editing. So for me, when I'm stopping and starting and recording different parts of the day, it made editing kind of hard. So it may be easier if I just did one take, like if I sat down and actually did the show on one take. The other thing is I didn't really have a place to display my notes on this episode as while I was reading. So for me, normally what I do is I have Notion running on my computer. I have it setting right there so I can see my outline, what I want to talk about. I didn't have that with me as I was walking. So my episode, I don't think it was as complete as it could have been, which is why I wanted to do a recap today, because I wanted to talk a little bit about what I was doing with it and how exactly I did it. So it wasn't necessarily as complete as it could have been. I shot the video, like I mentioned earlier, in a mix of the native iPhone app as well as the Road Capture app. And for whatever reason, the audio and video were out of sync at times during the Road Capture app. So after I did that, then I used Adobe Premiere Rush, which is actually a video editing program. I have a subscription to that, so I was able to bring in all of my videos and overlays and music and create the final show. So I just edited it like I would any other video, created it, and then what I did is I saved that video to my phone camera app, and then I used the Ferrite app, Ferrite, and it is normally an audio editor, but I didn't do any editing in it because I did all of my editing in Adobe Rush. But I used that to strip the audio from the video because Adobe Rush doesn't let me save as an MP3. So Ferrite allowed me to strip that audio out, and then I put in my graphic as far as my title goes, and then I used it to tag it the MP3, put my name in it, put all of the relative information that I normally do. So I use Canva on my phone to create the graphics for it, which is a little bit hard. I like Canva, but normally when I'm creating graphics for shows, I do that on my computer. I do it while I'm in front of a big browser on a bigger screen. On the phone, it was a little bit hard. So that was another thing to kind of warn. Maybe create your graphics ahead of time and save them again if you want to get really intricate with it. But you can do it with Canva on your phone if you want. So then once that was saved, I saved it to iCloud. So I saved my file to the Files app. And then I was able to go to Captivate.fm and upload it right from there, create my podcast. So if you're using your podcast host to create your RSS feed, then at this point you could be done. You could, if you upload it, create your title and stuff in your podcast host, then you could be done. But I use WordPress and PowerPress, like I was saying, to create my RSS feed. So for me, I had to create a post in PowerPress and WordPress, and then I was able to hit publish. So final thoughts. If I were going to do it again, I would not do this very often because it was a lot more work than normal. It kind of took me out of my element. Yes, I had a lot of time during the fair because we were there all week, but and kind of took me out of being around the people that I was with. And so I wouldn't do it very often. I have a workflow that works for me for this podcast, which actually got thrown off when I was doing this show this morning. If you were live with me, you know that I had trouble this morning starting. My audio didn't work quite right. And so I have this workflow that works for me and for my normal shows. And this threw me off a little bit because it was a different workflow. So it actually took me longer to edit, I think, than a normal episode would. And it was only like a 4-minute episode. And so for me, that was a lot harder. So guys, those are my final thoughts. So if you do an episode like this and you have experience doing it mobile, contact me. I want to hear you. Go to podcastanswers.com/contact, and that will allow you to get in contact with me and go ahead and just let me know what you thought of that. Also, guys, we have a Discord server and we would love to have you join us. That's just at podcastanswers.com/Discord. And guys, also, if you've not yet gone to our social media, go ahead and check us out on social media. We're at Podcast Answers for everything besides Twitter. But we'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for joining me. Next week, we'll have another episode.